blockbusting, steering, and the lasting impact of housing discrimination. Learning from the past. As we've seen throughout this course, housing discrimination has taken many forms throughout American history. Some practices were written directly into laws. Others were carried out by lenders, developers, or government agencies. Still others were committed by individual real estate professionals. Two of the most well-known discriminatory practices are blockbusting and steering. Although they are sometimes confused with one another, they are very different practices. Both violate the Fair Housing Act and are inconsistent with the Realtor Code of Ethics. Understanding these practices helps us recognize why fair housing compliance remains one of the most important responsibilities of every Arizona real estate licensee. Blockbusting occurs when a real estate licensee or another individual attempts to persuade property owners to sell by creating fear that people of a particular race, color, religion, national origin, or other protected class are moving into the neighborhood. The goal is simple: create fear, encourage homeowners to sell quickly, obtain listings. Historically, this practice became common during the 1950s and 1960s as neighborhoods across the country began to change. In many cases, rumors spread long before anyone actually moved into the neighborhood. Homeowners were told that property values would decline, crime would increase, or the community would change, simply because families from different backgrounds were purchasing homes nearby. These statements were based on prejudice, not facts. Blockbusting exploited fear for financial gain, and it caused lasting damage to many communities. Today, blockbusting is prohibited under the Federal Fair Housing Act. While blockbusting generally affects sellers, steering most often affects buyers. Steering occurs when a licensee guides, encourages, or discourages a buyer from considering certain neighborhoods based on a protected characteristic, rather than the buyer's stated housing needs. Examples include suggesting a buyer would feel more comfortable in a particular neighborhood, showing homes only in neighborhoods where the licensee believes the buyer fits in, avoiding neighborhoods because of assumptions about the buyer's race, religion, national origin, familial status, disability, or other protected characteristics. Steering limits a consumer's housing choices and violates fair housing laws. Our responsibility is not to decide where someone belongs. Our responsibility is to help buyers make informed decisions based on objective housing criteria. Answering difficult questions. Many buyers ask questions about neighborhoods. Is this a family neighborhood? What's the crime rate? Are there many churches nearby? Is this area diverse? Are there many retired people here? While these questions may seem harmless, some can lead to fair housing concerns if answered improperly. Instead of giving personal opinions or describing the people who live in an area, direct consumers to objective third-party resources whenever possible. For example, crime statistics published by local law enforcement, school information published by school districts, municipal planning websites, community services, and neighborhood associations. This allows buyers to make their own informed decisions without the licensee influencing their housing choices. Group homes and fair housing. Another question that occasionally arises involves group homes or assisted living facilities. Many residents of these homes are protected under the Fair Housing Act because of a disability. As a result, licensees should avoid discussing whether protected individuals live in a neighborhood. However, if a property nearby presents a material fact unrelated to a protected class, for example, a commercial operation or another condition that could materially affect the property's value or desirability, that issue may require disclosure under Arizona law. When in doubt, discuss the situation with your designated broker before making representations to a buyer. An Arizona perspective, housing discrimination has affected communities across the country, including Arizona. Historical research has documented that portions of South Phoenix were subjected to redlining during the 1930s, limiting access to federally backed mortgage financing and contributing to decades of disinvestment. Many older neighborhoods throughout Arizona also contain historical deed restrictions with discriminatory language that is now legally unenforceable. These historical records serve as reminders of why fair housing protections became necessary and why equal housing opportunity remains so important today. The purpose of studying this history is not to assign blame. It is to ensure these practices are never repeated. Why this matters today. Today's Arizona real estate professionals have a legal obligation to provide every buyer and seller with equal professional service. Our role is to educate consumers about the property, not to influence where they choose to live. Every buyer deserves the opportunity to explore every available neighborhood based upon their own preferences and objective information. That is one of the cornerstones of fair housing. Broker tip: If a buyer asks about the type of people who live in a neighborhood, politely explain that fair housing laws prohibit you from describing neighborhoods based on protected characteristics. Then direct them to objective resources that allow them to evaluate the community for themselves. Online discussion question: how are blockbusting and steering different from one another? Answer: blockbusting targets sellers by creating fear to encourage them to sell, while steering targets buyers by directing or limiting where they are shown homes based on protected characteristics. Question: why should real estate licensees avoid describing the people who live in a neighborhood? Describing neighborhoods based on protected characteristics can influence a buyer's housing choices and may create fair housing concerns. Licensees should instead provide objective resources so buyers can make their own decisions. Question: why is it important to study Arizona's history of redlining and discriminatory housing practices? Answer: understanding this history helps explain why fair housing laws exist today and reinforces the importance of providing equal housing opportunities to every consumer.